For the young folks here, I've taken this one for you because I thought
You don't have to. Yeah. It's a big role to take. I've been wanting to say this for years. You had me at to serve. I love this stuff. That's my bias. And it probably creates a bit of, who was it that said this? Darryl Cohn. He said that this could feed into narcissism of moral cause. You can get so wrapped up into it, you don't see anything else. So I'm heavy into servant leadership, I'm heavy into employee ownership, and a few other things, but servant leadership's big on my list. Like Dirk, I have my little notes here. So before I get into a little bit of meat, what I'm going to talk about is just a little bit about what practitioners may want to see, and a project I'm working on about putting a strategic angle on the servant leadership movement. So before I do that, everybody's had those times where they remember some event in their past. It's like crystal clear. You can't overwrite it in your memory. It just is there. So for me, I mean, we all probably had 9/11. That was a big one. For me, and my first one was, I remember as a kid, lying, in 1964, lying on the carpet watching black and white TV of JFK's funeral procession. I remember that. The next thing I remember like that was the moon landing. I remember precisely where I was with that. And then 9/11, and there are also kind of really good personal things that happened. I remember in 1985, and my wife is not here, I'm at 39 years, so I'm the youngster in this group. I remember my wedding reception. I don't remember the service at all, nothing. There's zero there. But I remember the party. I remember dancing to All of Me with my wife. I also remember during her first child's labor, her 40 hours of labor, I got to be friends with every nurse in the hospital, and I watched like 10 episodes of F True. I remember that very clearly. I don't remember anything from my kids. The next, scroll ahead a few years, 2018. What do I remember from that? Well, golly gosh, I remember I was in Chicago, and I was at the Academy of Management in the Sheraton. This was, two times ago in Chicago. I sat down, big room, servant leadership session. And I look around, and who do I see coming behind me? But it was Dirk Van Dierpomp. And he sat right behind me. And I remember that very precisely. So I am a worshiper, I'm a groupie like some of the rest of us here. So this is great, I'm loving this. So what might be useful to a practitioner that you don't already know? One way I've thought about this is with kind of all academic things seem to have a couple of waves to them. The first wave is the instrumental wave. It's what you were talking about. The second wave is the descriptive wave. First wave, we got to figure out if it works and how well it works. And the next wave is how does it interwork? What causes everything? So we've gone through a bunch of how it works. I don't think we're finished with the instrumental phase yet. I think there are other things that are there, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But what practitioners really want are those two things. They want to know it's going to give them something good, and they want to know how to implement it. They don't need much more than that. But so you're on the right track there. Another thing is that getting involved, as I have with Jim and other researchers on other topics outside of servant leadership, is incredibly beneficial to people like me and their organization. They don't know that. They're a bit afraid. And so getting over that hump, we've gotten so much out of our relationship. I think it's mutually reinforcing. But it's such a great thing. I would urge you, particularly young folks, to track down those practitioners and don't take no for an answer. They'll eventually come around, but you got to be persistent. One of the other things that I think is big with practitioners, and probably academics complain about this, is I'll call it their lack of reflectivity. They have so many things to do in a day, and so many things to juggle, that they've traded off a lot of in-depth inspection on something for their ability to juggle many ideas in many domains at the same time and make binary decisions. Now, that's a plus for their practice, but it's a downside for taking something that has a lot of intellectual depth to it, like servant leadership. So what we have to do is appeal to what they need. So making things, I don't want to say dumb it down and all that, but truly we need to put a marketing hat on and think about what do they need, what do they want for their organization. How can you package that? Academics are not really good at that. So that's a big problem we have. So the strategic approach I've been thinking about is that if there's one thing I feel very confident about, it's my ability to put together strategy. Had a lot of years of training in this. Many of you probably know all the different ways of looking at this. I prefer the kind of the Jay Barney resource-based view part of this, because it takes capabilities and resources and puts them in a framework where you can try to figure out what in them, or what resources and capabilities and to what degree can they become competitive advantage. So I'm lifting myself up, thinking not about an organization, but about the movement. Who are we selling to? Who is our target market? They are CEOs of companies that are thinking about servant leadership conversion. Very narrow niche. But how do we reach them? Number one, I think, Kent, you were talking a little bit about that. And number two is, what do they need to hear? What is the message? So what RBV does is it breaks things down into this nice little template of 4 individual things: value, rarity, the ability for it to be imitated, and the organization of your, in this case, movement, to make all of that happen.
Yep.
In our case, with the movement, only the value and the rarity really operate. So what's valuable and rare in a consumer's eyes to servant leadership? What could that be? I thought about this for a long time, and I came up with 4 things. Not that we need to come up, not that you need to come up with a new scale, but for me, the things that have some kind of resonance in the practicing world are, number 1, it's in this order. In this order of rarity. Servant first is clearly, singularly servant leadership. Second, stakeholder orientation. Besides, I'd say sustainable leadership and responsible leadership, there's really not much else out there that really has a leadership paradigm that focuses on stakeholders. Third, and going down in rarity, is first among equals. I think that's probably part of several different positive styles, but it's a little less than stakeholder orientation. Then the last, and this is a bigger group, is moral basis. So if we can frame the strategic problem with those 4 things, and there may be others, but those are 4 that I came up with. So for instance, if you take like a construct, one of my passions is to figure out how the other elements of the company work with servant leadership. There's a gazillion things that are going on. And one of my questions is, how do servant leaders, if they're truly altruistic and serving first, how do they move up the chain of command? Isn't that like MTL? Isn't that like motivation to lead? Who knows? Even if it's non-calculative. How do they do that? Well, one theory from the anthropology world, which is interesting to me, is dual strategies theory, which posits that a way to move up in social rank, and this comes from evolutionary theory, is either through dominance or prestige. Now, my firm is big into being a consultant. We're into prestige, not in a haughty way, so we get ahead by people knowing about us. So I would contend that servant leaders probably work more in that direction. But they are putting themselves out there, not deferring to serving others. That seems to be a bit at odds with at least part of servant leadership. So if you look at those 4 things I listed, maybe they're moving up because they figure out they could serve better or more, serve first, by moving up the chain of command. But it goes against first among equals. So I think you can use some of this to tease out some of the good things that may be worth looking at in addition to what's already been looked at. The other thing, and Kathleen Patterson and Dirk, I appreciate all your work on compassion. One of the things that I think is a hugely potential good outcome, but it's more on the self-serving side, because I think every leader's still got to eat. They still have to do something about themselves, as long as it's relatively less than the motivation to serve, then that's okay by me. They are a gift giver. They give gifts of themselves. And that creates joy for them. Now, I think that is a selling proposition to a questioning CEO. I think that would go a long way.
Okay.
So with that, I think I've got a couple of the random things, and I'll finish up. An opinion. I think self-determination theory talks about the heart of the servant leader very well. Exchange is great. I think that builds the trust, but I think self-determination theory takes over at some point for the servant leader. Just my opinion. These are all opinions, obviously. The followers. I have a pet peeve with the leadership scholarship that calls it leaders and followers. Followers to me is a derogatory term. And I just don't, I know it's technically probably right, but especially in the servant sense, when we're trying to get individuals to step up with shared leadership from a team standpoint, to take on the leadership themselves. And the servant leader is acquiescing all their power, they're empowering everyone. When you're calling those people followers, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, this is all in a name, so maybe it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to mention that. And my last advice, especially to the young folks, is one idea to connect with practitioners is to, instead of me going to the Academy of Management, you go to their conferences. And you will learn a ton there. And especially if you figure out who's running the conference, maybe you'll make a little money and give a talk. And then people will swarm you. So I think that's, if I were young again, that's what I'd be doing.
All right.
So good luck. Thank you.